is day 1640. Murdered in the line of duty on Fort Bliss for reporting criminal trafficking and fraud. Criminal trafficking, that includes human trafficking. It also includes the weapons and the ammunition. It just gets very, very dirty. It gets very dirty because of course, it includes the human trafficking. And we know that there are hundreds of thousands. So if they find 700, 800, you have hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied, that's taken children that were trafficked onto Fort Bliss, into these big camps. Can you imagine? These criminals were so bold. They were so dug in that they felt like they could do that. And they did it. They felt like they could. They did it. And of course, Richard's case is connected then to the the Santa Teresa jetport, and the Walmart mass shooting. And he said it was very bad. He said, Mom, it's so bad. It's very bad. I don't even want to be in the military. How can he explain it when he wants to be a criminal investigator and he knows how to document? You saw that with the letter that he wrote, Omi and Opie. He knows how to document. He knows how to write things. He knows how to collect things. He has a moral backbone. He has a foundation, a Christian foundation, and he could not be compromised. He could not be corrupted. Even if they brought in, like you've got the sergeant, the command sergeant major bringing in girls to the barracks to compromise our sons and daughters. Okay, that's what that's all about. They're going to party. No, this was during the mandate. Right then and there, that was a compromise. Okay, because it was against the rules, and the command sergeant major was absolutely compromising every one of the soldiers in the barracks, that he allowed those girls to be brought in during the mandate, the closure mandate. And then, of course, everyone has phones, and they provided plenty of adult beverages and of course, there was all kinds of other substances. And of course, the barracks were flush with weapons. It was absolutely a setup job of our young sons and daughters that were told by their recruiters that they were going to join the military to defend, first and foremost, the Constitution of the United States with esprit de corps, with training, with discipline, to protect the United States. This was such a setup job, such a lie. And Jake Jakovitz, the command sergeant major, needs to be held accountable, along with the generals, for what they did to our sons and daughters. And I've spoke to so many parents, and those that survived, thank God that most of them did, but they were harmed. They were injured mentally and physically. They came out of their service harmed, not better for it. And we're talking unnecessary. It's just, it's really disgraceful. So I wanted to address one of the very popular posts. Um, and it is about the Gulf of Mexico being renamed to the Gulf of America. Look, that Gulf, you know, it's a Gulf of America. It's Southern, South America, it's Central America, it's North America. And that renaming, I think, is brilliant because it really brings people together. And, I hear so many people calling President Trump all kinds of names, and I don't see that happening in the last 4 years. Uh, I think Biden got a lot of undue respect um, for what was going on during that time, especially the child camps on Fort Bliss. Um, so there is like this double standard, and um, Team Fine Richard Halliday, for one, we are very, very grateful to have a new administration that is serious about securing our lives, um, being securing the border, um, getting rid of the major criminals coming in that are absolute targets for cartels to recruit them. Um, and the cartels have r- just, they're huge. It's huge. And so we don't heed any criminals for the cartels to recruit. Matter of fact, those cartels need to be pushed back into their own countries. We need to clean up our streets and our schools um, and and all of that. And I know it's going to um, billions of dollars that people illegally have been depending on. Um, it's a horrible situation, but we have major crimes, and it is because of those major crimes that Richard, my son, was reporting on to help those children, to defend our Constitution, to defend our property, our American property, which is our taxpayer paid for weapons and equipment and ammo and everything like that. Um, and, and he was murdered for it. He was murdered for defending our country in so many ways, defending even the children that were being that had been taken and brought into the country, and who knows where they were taken. Um, and the more and more information is coming out, and I want to say that I want to explain what these criminals do that are very they're raised within these cartels, and what they do and what we have um, noticed that they do is that when they start getting caught, they start submitting complaints, like whistleblower complaints, um, in order to claim whistleblower status. And so in Richard's case, which, you know, it really, it's like, what was the date? What was the date? Um, because Richard's phone was taken and he was being impersonated. Um, it is, yeah. But let's get to Leilani Hart. She submitted a sworn confession on the 22nd of July, 2020. She also, we also have a document of a complaint that is dated October. Let me see if I have that. October 16th, I believe. 2020. Let me make sure. Yep, October. That one is 3 pages long. Her confession that we have the number for everything because it was being floated around um is 5 pages long. Okay? So that's 8 pages of Leilani Hart confessing of the worst types of things to the Department of Veteran Administration, to the IG, to the, and of course, if she's going to complain to the VA, I mean, she's like complaining to her own co-conspirators. It, you know, the point of this is that July 22nd, 2020 and October 16th, 2020, she is telling authorities the worst type of crimes. Okay? She is swearing to the worst type of crimes to the authorities. She is the mother of Richard's platoon leader, Dallas Hart, who is being implicated in these worst type of crimes. She is identified as being a prime suspect in Richard's murder case by Judge Roger Rodriguez in a whistleblower complaint to I would say a whistleblower report to multiple agencies. She is clearly identified in July of 2020, and I believe before then, on October 16th, 2020, and then in January of 2022. Clearly, of passing this information around, she's on a campaign. She is parading around her family member who she was having an affair with, the former disgrace, defrocked, right? Lost his badge, Fort Bliss CID agent, Tavita Nusa. She's saying that she controls the CID. She's saying that she has a government job on Fort Bliss, right? She's controlling. And Richard is murdered in the line of duty. They have his remains. They are in total fallout from the Vanessa Guillen finding of her remains and that whole case. And they decide not to tell us they have Richard's remains. They decide to go, who's they? Richard's chain of command. Richard's chain of command. They decide to go into cover up mode, to not have another Guillen situation. They fail to tell us because they are in fallout cover up mode about Dallas Hart and about the absolute um, reports about his activities that are just the worst of the worst type from Leilani Hart, and that Leilani Hart is a prime suspect in the case. They knew that when we were there, because she's connected to Danae Katzen. She's connected to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia. Danae Katzen came to us the day after we arrived, just about a day after we arrived, and took us to where she has connections, KTSM. They've dug in. These cartel groups have dug in into our country for a long time to do us harm, to take advantage of us through Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss is very easy to take advantage of if you can dig in there. If you can be a Trojan horse and get into Fort Bliss, and you can get control over an arms room, and the fuel and the transportation and the VA, all the benefits that we as Americans want our fighting men and women to have, along with our veterans. And you can, you know, get control of those purse strings, um, and the equipment and everything and weapons. It can be very, very profitable. And the land and the logistics to get all those tents to make the child camps. Um, it is really, it's not a coincidence that after Richard had made his complaints and there were audits involved and investigations, and they diverted that attention with the Walmart mass shooting, which was so divisive. You know, not divisive because reality. No, it's lies. It's lies to divide. Lies to divide. And they divide and conquer these criminal organizations so they could take advantage of us. And that's why when President Trump said that he was going to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, to me, that was unification. To me, that was recognizing all of us, all of us for good. The North Americans, the Central Americans that have been, so taken advantage of, along all of us Americans have been taken advantage of. Propaganda. You want to talk about propaganda? Oh my gosh. That whole Walmart mass shooting narrative was propaganda. But calling the Gulf of Mexico, which connects the North America with Central America with South America, I thought it was brilliant. We're connected there together. And I'm waiting. I am waiting for Google, because Google has said that they will change the map in America to in the United States, from the United States to the Gulf of America, that they will do it. And to me, that is a symbolism of unity. Instead of the divisive rhetoric and propaganda, like in the Walmart mass shooting, that Joe Spencer absolutely knows was a lie, was an absolute lie. And it's so funny when you look at all of the connections with Patrick Crusius and in the Walmart mass shooting. It's, let's just say there's a unification there. There is absolutely a unification connection with the military, with all of that, with those involved in that mass shooting. And from Germans, I mean, it's just unbelievable the connections there. And so it was not um, what they say. It was a lot of propaganda. And Joe Spencer knows that. And he played that game, that very evil game. It's kind of like a setup, right? A setup like the command sergeant major who, during a direct order for a closure mandate, violated that with Major General Clem Coward to sneak in with Director of Emergency Services Thomas Kane, who had to give the passes to the girls, to bring in loads of girls, loads of girls. And he told us to our face, we brought in the girls, not to stand 6 feet away from each other, not to wear face coverings, but to go in there and set up really to compromise our soldiers, our service members, our sons and daughters. He compromised our sons and daughters. And Joe Spencer wants to set El Paso up, not do it good, but he wants to line his pocket with millions of dollars, dragging this case on and on with a false narrative, partnering with the disgraced pedal pusher of fake news, Bob Moore of El Paso Matters, who had skin in the game because El Paso Matters is owned by controlled by El Paso Community Foundation, who is controlling the purse strings of the Walmart mass shooting victims funds, which was over $12 million and was being investigated for fraudulently distributing that money. Who are they distributing it to? To the criminals? To the criminals? So you have an international campaign to raise funds for the victims, and you're going to distribute it to criminals? I'll let that for the investigators. And this is the big one, to push a very divisive narrative because they thought that that would be an instrument for Beto O'Rourke's campaign to get an edge on President Trump. 100%, it was an instrument for a political campaign. And so, why do they want that? Because they want to control the law enforcement. And that day has ended because the President of the United States not only is the commander in chief, but also the chief magistrate and the chief law enforcer. And that's why you see this happening, and you'll see a lot of teeth gnashing. There's going to be a lot of teeth gnashing because people are spiraling down into their grief because their days of criminal profiting off of criminal trafficking is coming to an end. That's my prayer. And they can gnash all they want because what's happening is President Trump, and if you remember 2016 like I do, um, I remember the, the vote, everything, but coming into his administration, he was a rookie. He was green behind the ears. Well, that's not the case this time. He is a seasoned politician. A seasoned politician. And what I meant about green behind the ears is when it came to politics, when it came to being the chief law enforcer, when it comes to being the chief magistrate, when it comes to being the commander in chief. And he comes in with amazing skills. And this time around, he's coming in with his amazing skills, including being now a seasoned politician, a seasoned commander in chief, a seasoned magistrate, chief magistrate, and a seasoned chief law enforcer. That's huge. That's huge. And that's why you're seeing right off the bat. I mean, we're not even at 2 weeks, are we? And we're seeing right off the bat his control of the border, his advance in enforcing the immigration laws that we have in this country to get the criminals out. And if you've come in illegally, you've broken the law. And now this is coming from our family, who is a family of immigrants. Richard himself had to be naturalized. We had to do that. We have, a very international family. And you have to follow the rules, even if it takes a few years, because that means you're vetted. That means that you are now have skin in the game in this country and that you're going to think twice about doing it harm because you're legal. You're legitimate. When you're illegitimate, um, what do you have to lose, right? It forces you to do some forgery. It forces you, not forces you, but there's a slippery slope, and the stealing of identities, because you have to try to make your life here illegally, and it just doesn't work because it leads to more crime and more crime and more crime. So it's really unloving to let people come in this country illegally. It's very unloving because you're leading people in to be set up. You're leading people in you're, to be compromised, to continue doing their crimes. to yeah, you're setting them up to be criminals. So it is much, much more loving to send them all home and say, try again, but this time do it legally. Legally. If you are really wanting to come into this country, if you have, uh, you know, skills that that you want to offer, then come in legally, legally, so that we're embracing all these people that want to come in legally, that are not being set up to be compromised by having to live in this country illegally. To have real freedom. We're all about real freedom. Well, if you're always looking over your shoulder, if you're always look at Leilani Hart. She came into the country, this is by her affidavit, illegally. And her life has been one of crime, total crime. Before Richard even was born, she was steeped in her crime. Her criminal record is huge. And Fort Bliss chain of command didn't tell us that, oh, yeah, that one, that platoon leader that we never let you talk to, that guy, his mom is a criminal and she's identified as a prime suspect in the murder of your son by a judicial officer. Uh, yeah, that is, and why, think about this being connected, Leilani Hart's connected to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia. Why is it that Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia's family, why are they in possession, a family member in possession of Richard's possessions, items, after he was murdered? What's that all about? And we have it confirmed that his cards were being used and he was being impersonated and um, yeah. So if you see some gnashing of teeth, you're going to see it because this is uh, the way they operate. When you get close, when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, they will turn around and file complaints and become a whistleblower, false, and absolutely submit my notarized affidavit, and then on October 16th, 2020, 3 pages of confession of the most horrendous things, from the most horrendous crimes against children, against her own friends' children, to illegal videos of children, to using the VA, the Veterans Administration, uh, veterans benefits, disabled benefits, um, doing fraudulent acts with that, and stealing identities and forging and illegal weapon purchasing and the worst type of acts between parents and children that is totally illegal, among siblings that is totally illegal. I mean, the confessions, it's just hard to read because it's so bad. It's so bad. So, whatever she did in Richard's case, murder case, murdered in the line of duty, must be so bad for her to confess the worst of the worst. Richard's ghost must be haunting her and others so that they reveal how it's been, how our system has been compromised in connection with ties to the Mexican cartel. And I call them, creating the El Paso cartel. Maybe I should say El Paso de Norte, right? Um, because like Trump, I don't want to say it's the Gulf of Mexico. I want to say these are criminal individuals. Who knows where they really come from in the Mexican cartel and in the El Paso cartel? From what I know, they are pretty international. What they have in common is that they're criminals. And Americans, being very diverse people, we want law enforcement, we want peace, we want a good economy. Yeah, so that's how I take it. And and by now, people that have watched for 4 years absolutely get that. They get that. And so if you see, pushback against Trump, just laugh in their face. I mean, are you kidding me? After the 4 years we just came through, after Veronica Escobar was the co-chair of the Biden campaign, and they're gone. What does politics have to do with it? Politics has everything to do with this. Everything to do with this. Everything. Because they spew their false narratives. And Veronica Escobar had so much skin in the game, and she was given $1 billion. 1 billion. You're not talking about 100 million or 200 million or 500 million or 700 million or 900 million. She was given $1 billion and she lost. She lost. And when Biden, had that terrible night and all of a sudden they did that coup to bring in Harris, and then Harris had to hide because she's unqualified. She's absolutely unqualified. But she had $1 billion because the criminal trafficking is $90 billion just for the drugs, just for the narcotics. So this is all about politics. From the very beginning, it was politics, and in less than 2 weeks, it's totally changed. Totally changed because it's all about politics. And I know that Fort Bragg is called Fort Bragg again. Fort Hood must be called Fort Hood again. Woohoo! And I'm sure the Cavazos family is so happy because I would never want my name on Fort Hood as it is. We need to bring back that name, Fort Hood. We need to clean it up in honor, in honor. And then if the time comes when there needs to be a change of name, we can hand off something honorable to a wonderful family that have served this country. Yeah. And I hope that makes sense how I said that. But we don't need to change names to cover up the dirt. We need to clean it up, to clean it up. And what happened at Fort Bragg was so bad. What happened at Fort Hood was so bad. What happened at Fort Bliss is so bad. And it's under investigation, ongoing investigations. And I wanted to talk about Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rodick. I don't mention him too often. He is absolutely a prime suspect. Um, we have not forgotten about him. And, he is very a major person in this, what happened. And that's all coming together also with his conflicts with his connections with Leilani Hart, his connections with others in this case. That's all coming out, and he has a big he needs to be held accountable. He needs to be held accountable. So, this is about Americans that truly want freedom, that truly want the law to be followed for all Americans. This is Americans that don't want the cartel. They don't want that kind of lifestyle. They don't want children to be taken and trafficked, hundreds of thousands of them, and now they're mostly dead. They don't want it. They don't want Walmart mass shootings. We don't want it. And I went over to Juarez, and absolutely, they don't want it either. They're sick and tired of it. And so they just don't have the death penalty. And they don't have the ability to carry weapons like we do. We have the First Amendment, we have the Second Amendment, that we can carry weapons, that we can protect ourselves. And we also, in the United States, has the death penalty. And that is something now that all those that are protecting these terroristic organizations, these narco politicians, that they're facing. And that restrains evil when we establish that justice. Because what they did to Richard, what they've done to Fort Bliss, what they've done to whistleblowers, what they've done to our family, what they've done to our border, what they've done to so many in the VA, what they've done is so egregious. They absolutely need to face the death penalty. And what they did to President Trump, what they did to take the Walmart mass shooting and turn it into an instrument for a political campaign for Beto O'Rourke to use against President Trump, which Veronica Escobar participated in with Beto O'Rourke against President Trump. It was all all a political scam, a very deadly one. And there's no conspiracy with it because we have Joe Spencer's own recordings, own words. We have the hard evidence. It's not a conspiracy. It is fact. It is fact. And we have the case frozen now. And we have because they're not going to. I don't think they're going to have this hearing in April. No, that they don't want to schedule. It's frozen because it's a botched case. And they need to address the El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court because those judges have no authority. They're not even judges. They're impersonating judges because they cannot be in that position without being elected, and none of them are elected. And why? Because that's the first stop for any of these illegals that get into trouble. These illegals that get caught, that get into trouble, the first stop is this magistrate court. And they are like Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz that want to compromise these people's lives, set them up to be criminals, set them up to be illegitimate, illegal, make their life very, very difficult instead of saying, no, go home, and then apply for a legal status. Show us your skills. Be vetted. And if their skills are being criminal, then they can just stay where they are, right? They don't need to come in the country. Because then it'll just get worse. To give a criminal status to do more crime. To be compromised to do more crime. It gets worse. But a legitimate person has something to lose. And we want legitimate people in this country. And I hope that makes sense. Because it's the crimes that an illegal status, like Leilani Hart, that grew her criminal history, that she is now. Absolutely, we are demanding without any kind of negotiation her arrest because she is a prime suspect in the murder of our son, and she has done hard evidence crimes that she has to be arrested unless she's above the law. Is she above the law? I don't think she's above the law. And she started in this country as illegitimate. So she says. So she says. Not me. So she says. So I think that is powerful because it got snowballed so out of control, her crime, that Richard is dead. That Richard was murdered. And that his remains were disregarded and dishonored. And that's not acceptable. I want my son's remains. I want those who did this held accountable. And we are absolutely so grateful that President Trump won and that he has taken such huge action in less than 2 weeks that information is just pouring in. And 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 the institutions, um, the feedback is very, very good. I don't know if you call it very good. You're talking about a murder case and a very, very terrible murder case on that. But feedback where accountability is coming. Richard has been declared murdered in the line of duty. That's huge. Huge admission. So we're very, very close to getting his remains. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. And I hope I explained myself well.